Okay. Last week we were in Daniel 7. This week we start Daniel 8. But in Daniel 7, verses 1 through 3, we saw it was the first year of Belshazzar. And in other words, about 67 years have gone by for Daniel, and we haven't heard from Daniel. We haven't heard a word from Daniel. He interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream. That was it. Nothing's been heard for 67 years. So he's more than likely in his 80s. But it was in the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon. Now Daniel sees a dream, and the visions came into his head on his bed. Then he put the dream in writing, and he says, I had a vision by night, and I saw the four winds of heaven violently moving the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, different from one another. Okay, now if you remember last week, I had the sea and I had the little beasts popping up out of the sea. And if you remember, 67 years earlier, he had the vision of, well, Nebuchadnezzar had the dream and the vision, and Daniel had it. God gave him it so he could interpret it, okay, because Nebuchadnezzar wouldn't tell him the dream or the vision. So Daniel had the exact same dream vision that Nebuchadnezzar had, telling him about the four kingdoms. Is everyone familiar with the four kingdoms, right? Okay. Now, get a load of this. Now we're coming to Daniel chapter 8. This is the third year of Belshazzar. Okay, he had this dream in the first year that we read about last week, Daniel 7. Now it's the third year, which is also the final year of Belshazzar. He doesn't last more than 3 years. And now what is happening in the third year is the last year, and he has this vision, another one, confirming what he saw the first year. Okay, but I want you to notice this. Look at Daniel 8 as we begin, verse 1 through 4. It says it's now the third year. So we can see Daniel 7 was the first. Daniel 8 is the third year of the reign of King Belshazzar. A vision appeared to me, even unto me, Daniel. I can see Daniel so humble. He can't believe that he had a vision. You know, like, oh my goodness. Compare that to Nebuchadnezzar. God appeared to me, you know. But he goes, I can't believe it. Now look at what it says. That when I saw, I was where? Where was he? In Shushan. What do we remember about Shushan? That's the whole Purim, Esther. Take a look at this map. Shushan is in Iran. Babylon is in Babylon. Okay. It's about a 5-6 hour drive. Okay. So how long is it going to take to walk? How long is it going to take to ride a camel or a donkey? I'm telling you, it is 6 hours from Shushan to Babylon. Okay, where is King Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, is in where? Babylon. But where is Daniel in the third year of Belshazzar? Okay, why? Belshazzar doesn't know who he is any more than a 30-year-old would know who an 80-year-old is from another country. Daniel's been sidelined. Nebuchadnezzar and him were good friends, but after Nebuchadnezzar goes, you have evil Merodach, Neriglissar, Nabonidus. You know, Belshazzar, he has no idea who this Daniel is. Daniel's been moved clear over to Shushan. So that's where Daniel is. Now, he says, I was in Shushan, the castle, which is in the province of Elam, that's Iran, and I saw in the vision. Oh, let me take a look at this map. I have one other thing to show you. If you look at Shushan real close, right there, it says the tomb of Daniel. Daniel's tomb is over there. That's where it is. Okay. Now, let me bring up this. As I said, Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel 1, 2, 3, and 4 are in order. Daniel 1, Nebuchadnezzar takes Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Daniel 2 and 3 is the second year of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 4, we see judgment upon Nebuchadnezzar. 67 years go by. That brings us to Daniel 7, and then 8, and then you read chapter 5. Okay, so Daniel 7 is the first year of Belshazzar. that is when Daniel has his vision of the lion, the bear, the leopard with 4 wings, and this horrible monster. Daniel 8 and 5 are both the third and last year of Belshazzar. And in the third year, this is what we're going to look at today. He has the vision of the ram, the goat, the 4 horns, and the notable horn. And then Daniel 5 is the last year of Belshazzar, and the handwriting is on the wall. Now, if we remember, Nebuchadnezzar, about 70 years earlier, had the vision of this image. And then Daniel received it, and he interpreted that the gold head represented Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. The 2 arms of silver represented the Medes and the Persians. And then Greece was represented, by the bronze torso. Now, we know in that first dream he had, Babylon was represented by a lion. Medes and Persians was represented by a bear. And Greece was represented by a leopard that ended up having 4 wings, which had to refer to the 4 generals, of Alexander the Great that his kingdom was divided into. Now, because the Babylonian kingdom is about to end, he's in the 3rd year of Belshazzar, He's now reminded, and they don't start with Babylon. This dream starts with the Medes and the Persians, the 2-horned ram. It's the same story, but in a different scenario. And then the Greece is represented by the goat that has this notable horn in the middle. That is Alexander the Great. So is everyone following me? I want you to realize all these dreams are the same thing. And so he's realizing, even before Belshazzar sees the handwriting on the wall that his reign is over, Daniel's seeing his reign is over. He already knows before the handwriting was on the wall, because he's the one who had the dreams and the visions. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and then the one in the 1st year, now the one in the 3rd year. But he's clear over there in Shushan. Well, guess what? He ends up traveling all the way over to Babylon, because he's in Babylon when the handwriting is on the wall. So here we go. We see that he was in Shushan the castle, which is in the province of Elam. I saw in the vision, and I was by the stream of Ulai. One thing that's interesting, all of Daniel's visions and in Ezekiel's, they're by a river of water, because a river of water, in one sense, purifies the place where they're at. That's why it's always by a body of water. Now, we know previously that the bear represented Persia, or one of the arms. And here we're going to see here that one of the ram's horn is Medes and the other is Persia. All right, but let's look at this. Here he says, by the stream of Ulai, and I lifted up my eyes, and I saw, and behold, there stood before the stream a ram, which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Well, guess what? Persia was a lot higher than the Medes. The Medes didn't last very long at all, like 1 year, and then the Persians. But I want you to know right now, the Medes and the Persians were intertwined family-wise as well. I will show you that, I believe, next week. Then he saw the ram pushing west, north, south. No beast could stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will, and he magnified who? Himself. So what is Daniel seeing? He's seeing that the Persians are going to take over. And guess what? Where is the Persians' capital going to be? Shushan. That's where he is. He's not in Babylon. He's in Shushan. And he's seeing that this is where it's going to happen. Now, we now know that Daniel knows Belshazzar's time is up long before the handwriting is on the wall. That's why it's easy for him to translate it. Let me see where I'm at. All right, so here we go. Daniel 8, 5, and 7. It says, and as I was considering, behold, a he-goat came from the west over the face of the whole earth. It didn't touch the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had the 2 horns, which I saw standing before the stream, and ran at him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close to the ram, and he was moved with anger against him, and he smote the ram, broke his horns. There was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, trampled upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. Now Greece is represented by a goat, and the notable great horn is Alexander the Great. In the previous dream, Greece was represented by the leopard with 4 wings, but now it's by the he-goat. So, and before it was the bronze torso of the image. So we have to see these visions are happening over and over, the same vision, but different aspects. Now, the horn is a symbol of strength. And the fact that this horn has eyes means this person also has understanding. Eyes have to do with understanding, knowing things. And in Daniel 8 through 12, it says the he-goat magnified himself exceedingly. Himself. Notice he magnifies who? Himself. In Isaiah, the whole goal is to magnify the Torah, not ourselves. But it says, when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And instead of it, there came up the appearance of what? 4 horns. That's 4 governments. Okay, these are the 4 generals. With the leopard, it was 4 wings. With the goat, it's 4 horns. And out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceedingly great. This is referring to Antiochus Epiphanes and the whole story of Hanukkah. And it says, and toward the beautiful land, it waxed great even to the host of heaven. This is referring to Israel, that they would be as the stars of heaven. And the stars it cast to the ground. This is referring to the Jewish people. Trampled on them. Yea, it magnified itself even to the prince of the host. And from him the continued burnt offering, or the continual burnt offering, was taken away. The place of his sanctuary was cast down. The host was given over to it together with the continual burnt offering. Why? It was because of transgression. And then look at this. It cast down truth to the ground, and it wrought and prospered. Okay, so that one horn referred to Antiochus the Fourth, and we know the Seleucids that he came from was the smallest of the 4 generals, the different areas they had. He had the smallest empire. Now look at this. Truth is cast down to the ground. How many of you feel like that's happening? Okay, the truth is being cast down to the ground. You might think, well, what is God going to do? The truth has been cast to the ground. You know what he does? He laughs. Look at what it says in Psalms 2, 1 through 4. Why do the nations rage and the people imagine some vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed. And they say, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sits in the heavens is going to do what? He is going to chuckle, and the Lord's going to put them in derision. And then look at Psalm 85, 10 and 11. What happens after the truth is cast to the ground? It says, well, guess what? Now mercy and truth are going to meet together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. And now truth is going to spring out of the earth. Here it went from heaven and fell to earth. And now God is going to make it like a seed planted. Out of that is going to come. The truth is going to spring out of the earth. And I believe the truth is going to be coming out very soon. Okay? But it won't be our truth. It will be God's truth. All right. Look at Psalm 85. Now let's go. Oh, one interesting thing, too, is how many of you know the earth was cursed? Isn't that right? Well, how many of you know so is our human nature? Okay, it's corrupt. But guess what? It's also a fertile field where truth can grow if we take care of it. But let's go to Daniel 8, verse 13 through 16 now. It says, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said unto that certain one who spoke. There's a couple of holy people here. How long shall be the vision concerning the continual burnt offering and the transgression that causes the appalment to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? And he said to me, 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be victorious. And it came to pass when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision, that I sought to understand it. Daniel didn't quite understand it. And look at this. It says, and there stood before me as the appearance of a man, and then I heard the voice of a man between the banks of Ulai, who called and said, Hey, Gabriel, make this man to understand the vision. Okay, no, wait a minute. We heard there were two holy ones. One of the holy ones is telling Gabriel, hey, go help this guy to understand the vision. Who was that other one telling Gabriel what to do? Some say Michael, the archangel. He's involved in the book of Daniel. Some say think Yeshua as believers. But the whole purpose is to make Daniel understand the vision. So do you think Gabriel's goal was to make him understand the vision? Watch what happens. Well, first of all, I'll just tell you right now, Daniel doesn't get it. Even after Gabriel explains it, Daniel doesn't get it. And you're going to find in a few weeks when we go to another chapter, Daniel goes, oh, here comes that guy that tried to explain the vision. He's going to help me understand it. And he comes back and he tries to explain it to him again. But I'll show you that later. Okay, back to Daniel 8:17 through 19. I just want you to remember that so when we do get to that point, you'll go, oh, yeah. So now you got to remember, this is the third year of Belshazzar. You got to keep that in your mind. Okay, so he came near where I stood, and when he came, I was terrified. I fell on my face. Probably broke his nose. And he said to me, understand, O son of man, for the vision belongs to what? The time of the end. Now, as he was speaking with me, I fell into a deep sleep with my face toward the ground. But he touched me and he set me upright. And he said, behold, I am going to make you know what shall be in the latter time of the indignation. Now he says it belongs to the appointed time of the end. What is the difference between the time of the end and the appointed time of the end? Well, it's the Hebrew words. Okay, the first time of the end is et, but now it's moed. What's the difference between the time of the end and the appointed time of the end? We're going to find out. That is very fascinating. And we'll develop it more over the next few weeks. But there's the natural order of things, which is the natural end. But then that is compared to a divine decree that is superimposed into the cosmic calendar, saying this will be the appointed time of the end. Okay? And we're going to find that a lot of times in life, just like with Hezekiah, he had his time of the end, and he also had an appointed time of the end. Okay? And so we need to realize, in one sense, it depends on how we behave, what our end is and what it could be. But look at Daniel 8:20 through 24. He says, the ram which you saw having the two horns, they are the Medes and the Persians. Hello, that's what they are. And the rough he-goat is the king of Greece. So here, as I've been showing you in this picture that's up here, this is the same dream over 70 years being repeated and repeated, and the Babylon Empire is about to fall. Belshazzar's last year is about to fall, and now he's telling them the Medes and the Persians are coming. Okay? And then it says, and the rough he-goat is the king of Greece. The great horn, Alexander the Great, that is between his eyes is the first king. And as for that which was broken in the place whereof four stood up, 4 kingdoms will stand up out of the nation, but not with his power. And the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressors have completed their transgression, there's going to stand up a king of fierce countenance and understanding stratagems. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. And it says, he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and do, and he will destroy them that are mighty and the people of the saints. This refers to Antiochus. Now it's interesting, it says he will destroy wonderfully. In the Hebrew, from what I understand, that's not exactly what it says. It says he will destroy wonders. And what is wonder? Torah is a wonder. And he's out to destroy all the things of God, all the wonders of God. Okay, let's go to Daniel 8:25 through 27. It says, and through his cunning, he's going to cause craft to prosper in his hand. He'll magnify himself in his heart. And in time of security, isn't that interesting? Peace, peace, when there is no peace. And in time when everything's supposed to be secure, he's going to destroy many. He will also stand up against the prince of princes, but he'll be broken without hand. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which has been told, is true. And then he says, but you, I want you to shut up the vision for it belongs for many days to come. And Daniel says, I fainted. I was sick certain days. I rose up. I did the king's business. And I was appalled at the vision, but understood it not. Okay. Daniel chapter 8 is the third and last year of Belshazzar. He's in Shushan. This is the future Persian capital where he has the vision. Now we're going to jump to chapter 5 because chapter 5 comes after chapter 8. And only can understand Daniel when you read it in the right order. But before we go to Daniel 5, I want to introduce Daniel 1 and verse 2 for a historical perspective. It says, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with part of the vessels of the house of God. He carried them into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and the vessels he brought into the treasure house of his God. Now we know Shinar is in Babylon. If you remember, that's where the Tower of Babel was. And the Tower of Babel was built over the dead bones of the flood. Now, get a load of this. Where the vessels of God's house in Israel gets taken and put with the vessels in the pagan God's house in Babylon. My God can beat up your God. Okay. That's what it's got. The vessels are there. Well, guess what? For 70 years, they've been kept in the treasure house and not used because even the Babylonian God is set apart for the Babylonians. Well, look at what happens. They're in the treasure house. So now let's go to Daniel 5, 1 through 4. Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords. And what does he do? He drank wine before the 1,000. How many of you think he got drunk? I bet you just about everybody there got drunk. And look what it says. Belshazzar, while he was tasting the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which Nebuchadnezzar his father had taken out of the temple, which was in Jerusalem, so that the king, his lords, as well as his consorts and concubines might drink out of them. This is a huge defilement. And so what did they do? They brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the house of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his lords and his consorts and his concubines all drank in them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold, silver, brass, iron, wood, and stone. Wow. Wow. Now, it says here, Nebuchadnezzar, his father. Nebuchadnezzar wasn't his father. It's kind of like Abraham is our father. That's what this is saying. Nebuchadnezzar was more likely his grandfather or great-grandfather. But the point is that I also want to bring out, Belshazzar is in his capital in Babylon. Now, how many remember the book of Esther? Okay, and Ahasuerus and his big party, and they're all drinking wine, and he invites the queen in, Vashti. Well, this is several hundred years after this. Well, the protocols in Persia, the men and the women would be separate. The men would have their drunken party, and the women could care less. They'd be having their party. Okay, but look what happens. Here, to add an air of licentiousness and disrespect toward God, he has all the consorts and the concubines enjoy the drinking party. It's totally total defilement over the temple vessels. Now we know from Jeremiah 29 and verse 10, it says, "For thus says the Lord, after 70 years are accomplished for Babylon, I will remember you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place." Well, guess what? A lot of the Jews were in Babylon. A lot of the Jews knew Jeremiah's prophecy. And Belshazzar also knew the words of the prophecy. And he's worried that he's at that 70th year. Who's going to win now? Which God? Because their God says that they're going to be leaving. Well, guess what? According to his calculations, the 70th year had ended. So he felt, my God beat your God. It's now safe to take the vessels out of the treasure house and party with them. He was afraid to do it his first year, his second year. But now he thought the 70th year was ended. He won. The Jews haven't been delivered. So let's go party and drink out of the vessels. The problem is his calculations were off a year. Okay. Now, so what happens? Here we go. I want you to notice this. Here comes the handwriting on the wall. See, he had no fear of retribution. He thought the time was up, but not so. Now let's go to Daniel 5, 5 through 7. Watch this. In the same hour came forth what? Fingers of a man's hand, and wrote over against the candlestick upon the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. I'll stop there for a minute. You got 1,000 people all drunk, and all of a sudden they see a finger writing on the wall. It's a good thing they all saw it. But watch this. What did they see? What does it say they saw? The fingers of a man's hand. But what does it say? The king saw the palm of the hand. All the people saw the fingers of the hand, but the king saw the palm of the hand, which tells us that for the king, this message is for you. But watch this. The king's countenance was changed. His thoughts affrighted him. He wet his pants. The joints of his loins were loosed. His knees were smiting one against another. So the king cries out loud to bring in all the enchanters, the Chaldeans, the astrologers. The king spoke and said to the wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and declares unto me the interpretation will be clothed with purple, have a chain of gold about his neck, and will rule as one of three in the kingdom. Why one of three? Because Nebuchadnezzar was number 2. His dad, Nabonidus, was number 1. Okay, so now they get to be in that 3rd place. Okay, now, how many of you know Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the walls of Jerusalem? We know what happens after Belshazzar. Who comes along? You have Darius the Mede and then Cyrus. And what does Cyrus say to do? Build the walls, right? Okay. Whose hand is doing the writing on the wall? Whose finger? It's God's, right? And he sees the palm. What's on the palms of God's hand, he says, are the walls of Jerusalem. When Belshazzar sees the palm of the hand writing, he's seeing the walls of Jerusalem about to be built because they're on God's hand. Look at Isaiah 49, 14 and 16. But Zion said, the Lord has forsaken me, the Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget a nursing child, that she should have no compassion on the son of her womb? Even these may forget, yet I will not forget you. Behold, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands, and your walls are continually before me. Everyone sees the fingers, but the king, he sees the palm, and the walls of Jerusalem on the palms of his hand. They're coming back. Let's look at verse 8 through 12. So now comes in all the king's wise men, but they could not read the writing, nor make it known to the king the interpretation. Then was King Belshazzar really afraid, and his countenance was changed, and his lords were perplexed. But look what happens. The queen, by reason of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet house. Guess what? The queen wants nothing to do with his drunken revelry, and it's not his wife queen. This is Queen Mother. They say this very well could have been Nebuchadnezzar's wife. She's the one that knew Daniel. And so she comes to him and say, hello, there's this nice young man over here in his 80s. Okay, that can do this interpretation. It says right here, she comes into the banquet house and she says, O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts affright you, nor let your countenance be changed. There is a man in this kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. And in the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, was found in him. And the king Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, I say, your father, it's really his grandfather, but just know, made him master of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers, for as much as a surpassing spirit and knowledge and understanding, interpreting of dreams and declaring of riddles, and loosening of knots were found in the same Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will declare the interpretation. Well, it's a good thing he's still not in Sushan, or it would take a while. Okay, fortunately, he's come back to Babylon, and he's handy, but Belshazzar doesn't know who he is. Why? Belshazzar's probably in his 30s, and he's in his 80s. It's like, who cares? You're a prisoner. I don't know who you are. But the queen knew. Okay, Now, Daniel 5, verse 13 through 16, what do we see? Then was Daniel brought in before the king. The king spoke and said to Daniel, "Are you Daniel, who is of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Judah? I have heard of you that the Spirit of the God is in you, and that light and understanding and surpassing wisdom is found in you. And now the wise men and enchanters have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known to me the interpretation, but they could not declare the interpretation of the thing. But I have heard of you that you can give interpretations and loose knots." Maybe he was in the Navy. He says, "Now if you can read the writing and you make known to me the interpretation, you will be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold about your neck and will rule as one of three in the kingdom." And he's thinking, yeah, for how long? Your kingdom is shot, buddy. Okay. And so in Daniel 5, 17 through 21, he goes, Daniel answers and said to the king, "Let your gifts be to yourself. Give your rewards to somebody else. Nevertheless, I will read the writing unto the king. I will make known to you the interpretation. Here it is. You, O king, God Most High gave Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the kingdom, and the greatness, and glory, and majesty, and because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would he slew, and whom he would he kept alive, and whom he would he raised up, and whom he would he put down. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened, and he dealt proudly, he was deposed from his kingly throne. His glory was taken from him. He was driven from the sons of men. His heart was made like the beasts. His dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed with grass like ox. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that God Most High is the one who rules in the kingdom of men, and that he's the one who sets up whoever he wills." We have to realize God is the one who makes the kings and the presidents. Look at Daniel 5, 25 through 31. Now Daniel says, "This is the writing that was inscribed, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And this is the interpretation of the thing. Mene, God has numbered your kingdom." Here you are numbering God's kingdom. Guess what? God's numbering your kingdom and brought it to an end. Now, here's what's interesting. He only interpreted the first Mene. Why not both Menes? Well, you think it's the same thing, but actually, one was the end and the other is the appointed end. There were two ends, and he got the calculation wrong. There is the end, and then there's the appointed end. And then he says, "Tekel, you are weighed in the balance, and you are found wanting. Peretz, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians." Then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with purple, put a chain of gold about his neck. They made a proclamation concerning him that he would rule as one of three in the kingdom. It was that very night Belshazzar the Chaldean was murdered, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom. And he was about how old? It says 62. Darius the Mede was about 62 years old. Wasn't that interesting? Why 62 years old? Why would the Bible make it a point of mentioning 62 years old? Well, how long was Babylon given to rule? 70 years. Okay. Guess what? Nebuchadnezzar, in the 8th year of his reign, took over Jerusalem. Okay, and the captivity happened. Well, what is 70 minus 8? 62. This means that Darius was born the same time the captivity began. Here, God knew he provided the solution to be born at the same time Nebuchadnezzar came and took everyone captive. God had the Redeemer be born that was going to end up and be the enemy of Babylon. Isn't that fascinating? Babylon's adversary was born the same time Nebuchadnezzar entered the temple. Now, what do we see? Look at 2 Kings 24, 12 through 14. Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon. He and his mother, his servants, his princes, his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in what? The 8th year of not Jehoiakim's reign, the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. Okay, so because Jehoiakim only reigned 3 months. So here we see it was in the 8th year of his reign that he took the king captive and everyone else. Babylon rules for 70 years. So here you have the 62. Isn't that amazing? Darius was born the same year that Nebuchadnezzar did the captivity. I think that is amazing. Okay, so now, again, here we go. We have Daniel 1. Nebuchadnezzar takes Daniel. Daniel 2 and 3 is, matter of fact, Daniel 1 is not the first year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. He's not even king yet. It's the year before he becomes king. And then Daniel 2 and 3 is the second year of Nebuchadnezzar. Daniel 4, we see judgment upon Nebuchadnezzar. 67 years go by. Daniel chapter 7 is what you read after Daniel 4. That's the next chapter because it's the first year of Belshazzar. Daniel 8 is the third year of Belshazzar. And then you read Daniel 5, which is the third and final year of Belshazzar, and the handwriting on the wall. So you actually have to read chapter 7, chapter 8, and then chapter 5. Well, that is when the 70 years end. So now we go to Daniel 6, and then chapter 9, and then chapter 11 and 12, because that's all about the first year of Darius the Mede. Then you go to chapter 10, which is the third year of Cyrus. Now, when you read Daniel chapter 6, if you, in your Bible, go to 7 and 8, which has nothing to do with the first year of Darius, when you get to chapter 9, you forget what you were reading in chapter 6, and they're connected. So that's why you have to pull the other chapters out of the order. And when you read Daniel chapter 6 first, and then you immediately go to Daniel chapter 9, your mind will be blown like never before. The problem is you've always read 7 and 8 in between and got all messed up. And if you want to have some fun, this next week, read Daniel 6 and then Daniel 9 and then Daniel 11 and 12, skipping chapter 10, because it's the third year of Cyrus. Why in the world would they throw this thing in the middle? You're going to find some things that are absolutely incredible. I'd love to hear what you guys find this next Shabbat. But anyway, next week, we're going to jump into Daniel chapter 6. So the first several chapters of Daniel have to do with Nebuchadnezzar. The next group with his grandson Belshazzar. The next group goes with Darius the Mede. And then the final chapter is Cyrus. So with that said, I hope you guys have been enjoying the book of Daniel.